Hi, so here we have a NASA laptop model number 8930. So this is an older Core 2 Duo platform. I'm going to show you the problem with this laptop. So if I plug it in, so it's going to turn on automatically, which is fine. I think the battery is dead. So we get boost. So I have a hard drive with Ubuntu on it, so if I boot from it, you'll see that it starts booting, but then it cuts off. It's gonna turn on again by itself. Let's try another time. Okay. So this time it didn't turn off, but as you can see, it looks like it gets stuck on a black screen and nothing is happening. So the issue with this laptop is quite simple. I'm gonna show you what it is, but first we have to disassemble it. So let me remove all the screws to disassemble it. Anyway, I can already see what my problem will be, which is this guy right here. So this is a capacitor for CPU V-core. So the voltage, main voltage for the CPU, is a pretty big capacitor. This model is 900 microfarads. So this is the 907 here. And we call this NEC Tokin capacitor. So these capacitors always go bad after a few years. So when you see one of these capacitors on any board that you have a problem with, you just remove it and replace it with a regular SMD aluminum polymer capacitor. So I'm going to show you what kind of capacitor you can replace them with. So this is a donor board. And this donor board has a bunch of capacitors under the CPU. So this is the CPU area, socket is behind this, and you have these capacitors here, 330 microfarads. So what we are gonna do is remove this big capacitor and replace it by these 4 capacitors there. You must use this kind of capacitors, which are aluminum polymer capacitors. You cannot use tantalum capacitor, so I don't know if this board has any tantalum capacitor. I don't think so. Does it? No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. So these ones here are tantalum capacitors. You don't want to use these capacitors. They are worse than aluminum polymer. They have a little bit higher ESR and they don't last as long. So don't use these, use these. And on top of that, you can't use any random capacitor taken from anywhere. Always use capacitors from the CPU V-core area, because these capacitors will have low ESR. Low ESR is probably the most important property for these capacitors. So the NEC Tokin originally has an ESR between 1 and 2 milliohms, which is very low. So you need to get capacitors to match this ESR. So these capacitors may have like each one of them may have like 6 milliohms ESR. So if you put 4 of them in parallel, you get your resistance divided by 4. So you are between 1 and 2 milliohms, which is fine. You don't want to use hot air to remove this capacitor. If you use hot air to try to melt the pads of this capacitor, first it's gonna take a very long time because it takes lots of heat to melt, and you are gonna damage the bulbs from the CPU socket on the other side. So what we are gonna do is try to remove first the cap from the top layer by layers using a box cutter, and then we are gonna use our soldering iron to remove the rest. So I'm gonna show you how we are gonna do this. So be careful not to damage anything around it. So you take it on the corner, you make a dent, and try to go in like this. Sometimes maybe better to remove the top first. Yes, it's not a very pleasant thing to do, but doesn't matter. Now we can remove another layer. Just like that. Okay, we got it. Good. So we have still some leftover, but you are gonna see that with the soldering iron, they are gonna come off. Okay. Take some solder. So we are trying to melt the pad below the bit of caps that's left here. And now we can pick it up with just one part. Okay, starting to come off. Okay, we got it. So this side is good. Now we are going to do the other side. This side is a little bit easier, it seems. Okay. And we got it as well. Okay, we are good. I'm gonna wick a little bit. And if you are struggling to desolder, wick and stuff like this, make sure you have a decent soldering iron. So I'm using right now the TS100 with the C4 tip. It's good enough for this job. And you also have to use proper leaded solder. So I'm using this stuff. So this is a 6337. It's a pretty good solder, and you also have to use a good wick. So I'm using a Chemtronics wick. Both of these solder and wick were bought on tme.eu. If you buy this stuff on AliExpress, it's just gonna be garbage, so don't. Anyway, we are gonna clean that up a little bit. Okay, it's looking great, perfect. And we have to take our donor capacitors, which are right here. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so we got one. We got two. Three, okay, and fourth one. Good. So we have got all our capacitors, and now what we're gonna do is check, make sure we got the proper polarity. So I'm gonna take the multimeter in resistance mode. Let's make a continuity with the beep. Okay, so it beeps, it's good. And we're gonna put our probe on the ground plane right here, for example, the screw hole here, and we're gonna check. So ground is the inner square. As you can see, we have, sorry, not sure if you can see, we have 0 ohm, and if we do check the other part right there, we have 3 ohms because I didn't remove the CPU, so this is the resistance of the CPU, but it doesn't matter. So the outer part is the positive side, and the inner part is the negative side. So you have to make sure you get that correct. And if we check the polarity of these aluminum capacitors, so we have another one right there. So this one, if we check continuity mode, so let's put the multimeter in view if possible. Okay, if we check the negative side with ground, we get 0 ohm. And if we check the positive side with ground, we have 77. So positive side is the stripe on the capacitor. So the stripe of the capacitor has to go outside. So I'm gonna scratch a little bit here. And my tweezers are not good enough. So if I do this, we see that now it will be easier. Okay. Okay, so we should be good right now. So let's make sure we didn't create a short to ground. So let's check in resistance mode. And we have 2 ohms, which is still the CPU resistance, so this should be okay. So let's do a little cleanup. So I'm going to plug the power back in. The display, the power button. And we are booting. Okay, so as you can see, we are good to go. We booted to the Ubuntu desktop, so the machine is fixed. We just had to replace the NEC Tokin capacitor that has failed obviously. So let's unplug it. And we are gonna put it back together now that everything is fixed.